Hello, everybody. My name is Carter Hall, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of What Really Happened. With me today, I've got Carson Bradley. And Carson, thanks for coming to the show, dude. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. You?
Good, man. Just another day, man. Grinding it out. So many people may not know this, but you and I had a class together at WT where we took a film class, kind of talk about like adaptations and stuff like that. Where, I mean, in a good way. I hope I can make this in a good way. But like, you would get like after a movie, because that whole class, like the whole premise was like around like adaptations, like based off video games.
Hmm.
And we saw some, I guess, decent movies and some movies that weren't so decent.
Oh yeah.
And
Saw a
yeah,
few of
for sure.
the not decent ones.
Yeah, some of those decent ones. I mean, it's in the best way possible. You would deliver like the best rants after some of those movies. Like it reminded me a lot of Bill Burr in a way. Like if I could say that
Really?
nicely. Yeah, you're like,
Right.
yeah. So like, some of those movies were not good at all that we saw. So
No, not
yeah,
even.
not even so. Man, there was some movies I was thinking just earlier today. I'm like, there was so many movies we saw that I forgot about, and that's a good thing that I don't remember any of them.
Absolutely. I remember a few of them in the worst possible ways.
Is
Double
there,
Dragon. I still despise Double Dragon.
me too. I remember that's one of the ones I remember, but I'm kind of like, why do I remember that one? It wasn't that great of a movie to begin with.
No, that one's my least favorite of all the ones we watched.
Why was that? Like, why was that movie like so bad and that stuck out to you?
I mean, it had like a good concept, obviously, because it's like a successful video game, but like they don't become the Double Dragon until the end of the third act.
Yeah.
It's not like they
Yes.
became the Double Dragon and had a big fight. They had a big fight, and then they became the Double Dragon, delivered one hit, and the movie just ended. Like, it was so boring.
It was. There's no real flow. I thought there was like no real flow to it. It's like, so there's like
No,
some
yeah, the
backstory, then
pacing
all
was
of a sudden
horrible.
yeah, it was like, it wasn't until the third act. It was really, like you said, there's that one big thing at the end, and then boom, they're the double dragon, and then movie's over.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But that was the whole premise, like, of that class was just, I guess, video games that got turned into movies. Was there any movies that, like, good movies that you remember from that class that stuck out?
Um, I think Sonic is fairly decent. It's definitely the most watchable one, which sure enough, it was the last one we watched.
Yeah, literally, the last movie that we saw was Sonic.
I mean, saving the best for last though, because I know he was like doing it in release date order, and yeah, that was by far the funnest one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even that movie alone, I think before it even hit theaters, had a lot of criticism going into the movie before it even got released.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you know
so
the design and everything.
that the whole design of that movie is just not so much. I don't think it was even the plot of the movie because we didn't know the plot at the time, obviously. But like it was just
No, yeah, it was
animation.
just the look of Sonic. People were out.
No, they saw the trailer because I wrote my paper over that movie and I was like, there's so much I've learned about that I didn't even know about. Like so much money went into just changing that one animation of Sonic throughout the whole movie. That's all they changed. Like,
Yeah.
animation. So, what do you think about Sonic? What element like of Sonic did you like that stuck out to you?
Well, him as a character, like Ben Schwartz, I think is the guy who played him. It was Jean Ralphio from Parks and Rec. He
Yeah,
like really seemed so like enthusiastic about playing him, and I think he's a really funny guy. Like he has a stand-up special on Netflix with this other comedian. It's hilarious, and obviously Jean Ralphio is one of the funniest characters on one of the funniest shows ever.
yeah.
And yeah, like his voice performance was perfect. And whenever they redesigned him, the look was perfect. And so yeah, like as the character himself, they nailed Sonic for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I remember playing the game, one of the original games way back when it was on like Dreamcast and all that back in the day. So I remember playing it, and when I heard there was a movie going to come out, I'm like, man, I hope just as a fan of the game itself, I was like, hopefully they nail this right. And they came back, and I think with the voice actor of Sonic, they did it right. I mean, the voice was there, just the animation of the look of the character originally. I think everybody just like bullied the movie. I don't want to say
He
bullied.
bullied the studio, yeah.
Studio pretty much into reanimating him. This is crazy, but I've never seen that happen before.
No. And now it's happening more. Did you hear recently that Idris Elba will be playing Knuckles?
I just saw that last night. I was like so excited when I heard that. It
Yeah,
was,
that is perfect.
it
And
is.
they announced it in the perfect way. Like, I saw it was his Instagram post, and I was just like, yes, fresh off of Suicide Squad, which was awesome. And now he's Knuckles. Like, yes.
It feels like the stars are finally aligning for everything, It feels
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
everything's working out. It's great. I still haven't seen the second Suicide Squad movie yet, so maybe I can watch that this weekend. So,
Oh,
but
it's good. I went and saw it in IMAX. It was so awesome.
cool. Like, without spoiling it, like what are some like what was good about it? Was it the storytelling or just what was it?
Oh man, it was definitely that because the first one was like a huge mess. Like the plot
Yeah,
was a mess, the editing seemed like it was broken overall, and the characters were awful. The comedy was like wince-worthy. The comedy in this one, it's James Gunn. It is so funny. I mean, John Cena, he's kind of a living meme. He stole the show in that in almost every scene, and so did King Shark, Sylvester Stallone playing him. And so yeah, the comedy was hilarious. The action sequences were also a lot of fun. Like it was really violent, but in a tasteful way. Like like something like Kingsman. And and something that James Gunn does so well is he takes like these colorful, kind of stupid characters, like the Guardians of the Galaxy on paper. They're kind of stupid, but
yeah.
he makes them like more than just, a shark that is looks like the Hulk and makes them more than just Harley Quinn and she's crazy. Like there's like emotion to them and it was kind of unexpected. And there's a lot of unexpected things that happens throughout and that's where I'm gonna stop and not spoil anything.
Cool. So like it's kind of funny, like you said, John Cena's pretty much a big meme, so it's kind of funny they found him to even play this movie, so everybody's still searching for him because he's apparently invisible. But
I love that joke. It's been going for like 10 years.
yeah, yeah, I'm kind of, I saw the first one in theaters when it came out, and I was like, man, it was kind of some parts were more cringy than others. It seems like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and then like. I remember even back then, Jared Leto was getting so much heat for playing the Joker. And when it came out, I was like, man, hopefully it'll be good. Then I watched it, I was like, man, that's not where I thought it was going at all. But
No, because
uh,
I saw a YouTube video recently that compared his performance as the Joker to Jim Carrey as the Mask, and I cannot unsee that now.
oh really? That's,
Yeah.
are they pretty similar?
Yeah, like the way Jim Carrey acted whenever like the character had the mask on, he was like super extravagant but it worked for the mask because the mask is a Jim Carrey movie.
Yeah.
But as the Joker, it just it's not the Joker, you
No.
know?
Yeah. I kind of remember, when like Heath Ledger and all those guys started playing the Joker, and Heath brought a lot of, you know, charisma, and he played that character so great and brought everything. So he brought something to it that I don't know if anybody else can bring to the table as a Joker, and you know,
Not in the way he did.
no, apparently, and even that's pretty cool. It worked out. He got an Oscar for that role, I believe.
He did. Him and Joaquin Phoenix both won an Oscar for playing the Joker. I think that's the only time in like the Academy history that two different actors have won an Oscar for portraying the same character. I think. I could be wrong.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that. I didn't even think about that. It's kind of crazy that there's two great actors, who portrayed that one character. It's one of those characters that just they're so good. It's like it's weird. It's kind of weird praising a villain. Not praising a villain, but like get a villain in a movie getting an
And like
award.
learning to understand him.
Yeah, because it feels
And
like
like with a character like the Joker, there's so many layers that like an actor can just peel back and really immerse themselves into. And that's clearly what Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix did. And with Jared Leto,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know what, it's like he just had like such a big ego and probably bad direction too, I can imagine. And it just went all wrong.
It did. Every time I think of Jared Leto, I think of him as the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars. That's how I was brought up. And
I
I'm like,
forget that he sings too.
I know. Every time I think that, I'm like, Jared Leto. I mean, I remember like in middle school or high school when Jared Leto came out with a new album with 30 Seconds to Mars and anything like that. I'm like, oh, this band's pretty cool. And then I turned around, like, I remember, I think Dallas Buyers Club was the first movie he was in. I remember him watching, and I'm like, hold on, that's Jared Leto. He acts like, is it just one
That was a
scene?
good one though. That's a
That
good
was,
performance.
that was, and he turns around and does like Suicide Squad and all this. I'm like, what? There's like no
Yeah.
in between. He's like that Dallas Buyers Club with Matthew McConaughey and like Suicide Squad like right here. So
Yeah.
it's like there's
He's
no.
never in between. It's always amazing or the worst thing ever.
It is. I mean, I'm not. It is. I mean, he's a great actor. Don't get me wrong. It's just like kind of like the whole. This kind of reminds me of like the whole, I guess, Captain American, like not Captain, Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of thing. You know, it's like
Right.
that one character that everybody hated. You know, it's pretty much I think a little bit, not so much identical, but somewhat the same. I think it's like they hated the character so much, but it's like I don't know, just that we can hate the character, but just don't hate the person in a way. I don't know. Did you watch?
Mhm.
Are you more of a DC or Marvel fan?
I'm not, when I was growing up, I was more of a Marvel fan, but now I'm not really too heavily leaning on the others, just whichever, whichever has like the best content. My dog just made his way in my room.
Okay.
Whichever has like the best content, that's what I like more. And obviously, Marvel has a way better track record
Yeah.
than DC so far, but DC has some good stuff because, like, the Dark Knight trilogy is amazing,
Yeah.
and this new Suicide Squad, as we mentioned, it was awesome. And Joker was pretty good. I don't think it's as great as a lot of people said it was. Like, I feel like it definitely was held up by Joaquin Phoenix, and if not for him, the movie would probably not be as good. But that's just me.
Yeah, I remember you kind of brought up content and everything like that, and like good content and everything like that. So kind of want to dive into like we brought up here you brought up content, and then earlier we are kind of talking about adaptations and everything like that. So I kind of want to combine the two. So
Right.
like
Yeah.
so like when it comes to like adaptations, wherever it is, movies that were video games that get turned into movies like Sonic was, or TV shows that get turned into movies or whatever. What what good content can they make into a movie? Like how can I say this? Like what makes like what content like we're talking about like last night like TVs, books, anything like that that can turn into a movie. What is your thoughts? Like what makes a good movie? You think based off whatever it first originated from?
So basically, in my opinion, like when it comes to like a TV show to a movie, what always is like the best result typically is that the movie's just a longer episode. And
Mm,
I think the worst example of this is the Impractical Jokers movie. I love the show. It is one of the funniest shows probably ever made.
mm,
And it's like a basic structure. It's uh, a competition show amongst friends.
yeah.
They perform a sketch, kind of. It's like a hidden camera prank. They perform that. Whoever refuses to do what the other guy says loses. They do that until there's a big loser and they have one big final punishment. There's not like a plot to it, but the movie for some reason decided to have a plot, have a story. The Impractical Jokers themselves are not actors,
Mm-mm.
and so the acting was really bad. And it was also PG-13. And the thing about the show is that, it is heavily censored because it's on TV.
Mm-hmm.
But what would have made the movie such like a novelty is if it would have been the same structure as the show, but make it longer, unedited, uncut, and like uncensored, and like make it rated R almost. And that's what would have that's what would have made Impractical Jokers better as a movie instead of having a really unfunny plot. Because like there are some scenes where they're not doing their typical thing, where it's like a scripted sketch, and that's not what they're known for. And so
Yeah.
that comedy fell flat, and there's not much of a novelty to it because it is censored just like the TV show. But a good example of this very thing that they should have done is the Jackass movies. Because
Sure.
like the show had a basic structure. It's just dumb stunts. and that's it. And, since it was MTV, it was censored, and there was a lot of stunts that they had to cut out. It was mostly Steve-O. But, um,
Makes sense.
yeah. And it was, just on like a 30-minute time, like most TV shows. But with the movies, they had no worry about time. They had no worry about censors either.
Mm-mm.
And that's all they needed was just more time and no restrictions. And sure enough, they haven't made it into a TV show since the first movie came out. And that first movie, I think, came out in 2000. I could be
Wow.
wrong.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like 20 years old at this point. And here they are in October about to release the fourth movie.
Which
And
is
like
wild.
clearly it works better as a movie because there's no restrictions, there's no time, and that's all it is. It's just a longer, uncut episode. And therefore they've made four movies now. It's now better known as a movie franchise than it is a TV show. Where in Practical Jokers, it's still known as a TV show. That's definitely the best, funniest one, but the movie could have been just longer and just more of what we wanted from the show, but instead it's watered down and like honestly kind of less pranks than what we're used to on the show even.
Sure. I mean, I remember watching those movies growing up a lot, I mean, probably being a little too young to watch Johnny Knoxville and all those guys doing what he does, but
Oh, same,
yeah,
same.
I remember tuning into MTV every once in a while and watching, Johnny Knoxville or Steve-O or Bam do all those crazy stunts. I'm like, dude, how does this make air? Like, how does this honestly make air? Like some of the stuff they did, like even on
Right.
MTV, I'm like, how did they even make air? Now they're making movies, and I remember going to go watch one of the movies in theaters. I think it was the third one. I'm like,
Dude, oh my
dude,
God, I am
I'm,
so jealous of you.
and no, and I was like, man, how did this? My mind was blown. Like I was laughing, but like there's some parts I'm like, okay, this is so stupid. Like I would never do this in a million years. Like, but it just there's something about it that just kept me at least tuned in to like, okay, there's no like real storyline, but just
Oh yeah.
it's what they took from a TV show and adapted it to a movie, and I'm just like, wow, that's just crazy. 'Cause you said there's not so much, censorship. The ratings can go up. The rating of the movie can go up because they could do so much more than what they could previously on TV.
That they did.
Yeah, so it seems like there's, that I don't know if you've ever seen this done before, but the whole porta potty one. I'm like, there's no way you could get away with
Ooh,
doing. Yeah,
cocktail,
yeah, no way they
yes.
could do that on TV at all, like at all. So
No, no, especially not if we're talking about the third one where it's like a bungee thing, like a bungee ride, but it's a porta potty full of
yeah,
poop. No,
exactly.
that would not have been allowed on TV. And even then, with the third one, they still exceeded like past their restrictions from TV because the third one was in 3D,
That's
and
wild too.
that's one reason why I wanted to see it in theaters so bad. And and like the reason why I thought of Jackass is not only because the fourth one's coming out soon, but I finally got to because I've been wanting to see the third one in 3D for so long since I didn't in theaters, and I went looking and I found the Blu-ray and it actually came with like the paper 3D glasses.
Yeah.
10 years later, no, 11 years later, I finally got to see it in 3D. It was amazing. It was an experience.
Oh, really? So,
That's something someone needs to do at least once in their life is watch Jackass 3D in 3D.
yeah, it's obviously in the name, so you got to do it at least once in your life, right? So,
Absolutely.
who's your out of that whole crew? Who's your favorite? Like, do you have a favorite like person out of that group?
I want to say Steve-O.
Why is that?
Well, like in the show, he was like the ballsiest, craziest one. He has that distinct voice, and he's just like such a big personality. And but then whenever you look behind the scenes and look at him now, that dude is like the living embodiment of self-improvement.
For
Because
sure.
like he was a really bad alcoholic and drug addict. Like he like had an intervention with the Jackass crew before they made the third movie because he was like talking about doing a stunt that involved jumping off of like the balcony of his apartment. And they were like, this is gonna kill him.
Yeah.
And now he's like a full-fledged vegan and has been clean and sober for like 12 years now. And when there was a time everyone thought first one that's going to die is going to be Steve-O, he's probably going to outlive all of them at this point.
Yeah, it's just Steve-O's done amazing things. So I follow him on Instagram, and it feels like if his life is at 100, like he just took his life 180 degrees. He's living a complete different life than he was previously. And when I heard
Oh,
they're
yeah.
yeah, and it feels like when they made when I heard they're making a new movie, it was just a fourth one. It was just rumors at that point. I'm like, is he going to be in it? Two, if he is, how is he going to be able to be in it and not go back to that life he lived before? Because I felt like
Yeah,
that's my
like
biggest
taking
story. Like,
all the hits and not
yeah,
needing alcohol. Because to do what they do, you're going
yeah,
to have to drink a little bit.
for
And
sure.
sure enough, they all do.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of funny. I saw an interview or video somewhere on YouTube, I think not long ago, like about a month or so ago, and I saw it was Johnny Knoxville, and his hair was literally all white, and I'm like,
It is going fully gray now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, they kind of took me by surprise. I thought that was like a part of the stunt. I'm like, man, it feels like I was older now because it felt like I remember when he had that whole his whole hair was dark. Now it's like all white. And I'm like, wow, this group is really getting older. And I'm like, are some of these stunts even going to be safe for them to even do to begin with?
Right. For their sake, I hope this fourth one is the last.
Yeah, I thought 3D was going to be the last one for sure.
Yeah, I think most people assume that because of their age, and I mean, not all of them are in as good a shape as Steve. I mean, have you heard about Bam
Yeah,
recently?
yeah,
Like that is tragic. He's
it is.
unrecognizable. He's not even in the fourth one because
No,
of how difficult he is.
and it's just so crazy because I feel so bad because it feels like he was kind of living that life that Steve-O was a little bit, you know?
Oh yeah, and he never grew out of it and wanted to improve himself.
No, it feels like it feels like multiple people tried to help him. It feels like he couldn't get that help, unfortunately.
I
At
mean,
least,
he had the same support group Steve-O had, really.
yeah, I guess since it's people, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It seems like many people, as much as you try, it seems like, I guess he just doesn't want the help, I guess. I don't know. That type of
I
help from his
guess
own
not.
friends. It's so sad though to hear that whole story, but, you know, it's going to be kind of different. I'm kind of waiting for this new movie to come out, kind of go watch it, cause,
I am so. Have you seen the trailer for it?
yeah, I've seen it a couple of times when it came out. I'm like, I'm so excited. It makes me want to go watch it right now, but
It looks good, man. I was afraid it was gonna be like a little tame because of their age, but nah, they still got it.
yeah, they're still going at it like they were in the first one, it seems like too.
Oh yeah. No, it's gonna be
For
good.
sure. Is there any other like adaptations you can think of that are good or bad? Like that
Well,
or from somewhere else?
yeah, well, we just talked about TV shows. If we want to talk about video games like we did in Dane's class, we totally could. Because there's like a few movies that we didn't even cover.
For sure. Like what movies do you think that come to mind that we didn't even like bring up or touch on?
Well, the movie that I wrote the paper on, the final paper, I wrote it on the Need for Speed movie, um,
Yeah.
which isn't great, but I do wish we would have watched it because it is such a harmless movie. Like it is not like offensive and boring. Well, it is a little boring, but not as boring as something like Double Dragon.
Yeah.
Um, and it just would have been a breath of fresh air because it just seems like such a normal movie compared to everything we watched. But in the paper, I talked about how much potential it really had because that movie's cast, the fact that it's a largely forgotten about movie with its cast, like it's insane to me. Like it has Aaron Paul, Dakota Johnson, Dominic Cooper, Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is in it. Kid Cudi's in it too, and they had Rami Malek,
Oh yeah.
Oscar winner, Mr. Robot himself, and Rami Malek's barely in it. Most of the movie is just Aaron Paul driving a Ford Mustang and like not even racing. And I also talked about how even if they knew their full potential and like exceeded that, I still don't think the movie would have performed well at the box office because it came out a year after Fast and Furious 6.
Oh yeah.
And when it comes to Need for Speed, we kind of already have that in movie form. in the form of the Fast movies. And unlike literally almost every franchise ever, Fast and Furious reached its peak with like its fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh one. Like as they kept making them, they were getting better almost.
Yeah, it seems like they always keep getting bigger and bigger. Like I forgot I lost count after like the fifth or sixth Fast movie. Like I lost count. Like I did I'm like, man, what movie are they on now? Man, it feels like this could have been ended like 3 movies ago. I finally got around to watching the ninth one, and
Yes, I went and saw that. I
so
loved it.
I just skipped I think 7 and 8. So I had to like YouTube like, okay, so what's the premise? What's the storyline? What did I skip? And then on the way to the theater, because I felt like I wanted to go watch the ninth one, but I was like, man, this movie was just a little bit. It's still it's still a
It's
little bit better.
dumb. It is really dumb.
It was like I'm trying to just find a nice way to say it, but like I remember watching it. I'm like, man, there's some characters I don't even like remember. Like the only I remember obviously is I remember Ludacris being in it from the second one because I remember watching
Yes.
Race in theaters when I was a little kid when I first came
Wow.
out, and I remember watching Fast Nine in theaters. I'm like, man, there's so much to the story I've completely forgotten about. I don't remember half the stuff. I'm like, now John Cena's in it. Like, what's going on? Like,
I loved John Cena in F9. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that franchise. I own all 8 of them on Blu-ray. I watched them all back to back to back before I went and saw the ninth one. I picked up on every little reference. I was fanboying a little bit when I went and saw it. It is certainly not a great movie. It's really, really dumb, but like, I can't help it. I just love it. It's like a little puppy. It's like a puppy that's kind of dumb and kind of clumsy, but like gosh darn it, you can't not love it. That's
for sure.
basically my dog now.
Yeah, it's just kind of like that movie. I remember watching it. Like, there's so many aspects. Like you said, just going to go watch. I mean, I feel like I wanted to watch it because there's something deep down I wanted to go watch it. There's something I
it,
was like,
it
well,
it does that. It's got a charm to it.
yeah. There's some movies out there that are like that. I think I was like, man, I want to go watch this movie, but like in the middle of the movie, I'm like, man, why am I watching this movie? But at the end of the movie, I'm like, man, good thing I did watch that movie because I felt like I'm not like left out on it. It feels like I talk about it, you know?
Yeah,
But yeah, so you said you wrote your paper for Need for Speed.
yeah. I kind of drifted off of
Sorry,
uh
no,
that
it's okay.
topic.
No,
No
no,
pun intended.
okay. So you said you wrote about you wrote about the box office aspect of it, or that we?
Yeah, I talked about how it had so much potential to actually be really good, because of the cast, but the writing completely underutilized pretty much every character,
Mm,
and it was kind of a boring plot. Like it's a street racing movie, and where it could have been, because at the time, Fast Six had just come out. That one was definitely one of the ones that was most certainly not about street racing and was more world saving, larger than life action sequences. Still good though. The sixth one's one of my favorites. Anyways, but where Need for Speed could have been that little taste of what the originals were, where it was like mostly street racing, it could have been. It was so close to it, but there's like, I think 2 actual races in the movie. It's at the very beginning, and it was a pretty well made scene. And then it was at the very end. And at that point, if you're like still invested, it might be a payoff, but that movie, like everything between the races, was just kind of a boring road trip movie. And with most road trip movies, it's like a comedy. This one wasn't. And so it was just kind of lacking any real charm or character. And it just was like, hey, look at this new Ford Mustang. Do you want to buy it? Because it was brand new at the time. And it is a nice Ford Mustang, but that movie came out in 2014. I have never owned a Mustang, so it must not have worked on me. I wouldn't mind owning one, but that's besides the point. Um,
I wouldn't mind
and
one either.
so, and like everything in between was just so boring when in reality, the plot could have been like a race against the clock. It could have been Aaron Paul's character being wanted, which it kind of was, but it wasn't. Like the plot really doesn't make a lot of sense because he's trying to get into like this super secret race, and he wants to attract the attention of the curator, which is played by Michael Keaton. And when I say underutilized actors, Michael Keaton is a legend. If you've seen
Yes.
Birdman, that is one of the best performances from any actor ever. Um,
Sure. He's a goat too when it comes to acting.
Absolutely. And he should have won the Oscar for Birdman.
For sure.
That's a different rant for a different time. Um, and that even came out the same year as Birdman. I just realized that. Anyways, and his character is in one room the whole movie. They have Michael Keaton, and he's in one room. It looked like they could have shot all of his scenes in one day. Like, criminally underused.
For sure.
And so Aaron Paul's character is trying to attract the attention of Michael Keaton, but not the attention of the cops. And so it's like, so what are you trying to do? Are you trying to attract attention, but not? When in reality, it would have been cool if they did have him attract attention, because the point of the game is to race and be in hot pursuits from the cops. So they could have had most of the movie be a run from the cops. It could have been like Smokey and the Bandit almost, which is my dad's favorite movie ever. And it's an all right movie. It's Burt Reynolds, absolute
Yeah.
legend. And where it could have been like a more high octane version of that, it was boring. And sure enough, it flopped at the box office. I think largely because Fast and Furious had like very much reached its peak. And even if the script utilized the characters and wasn't horribly boring, I don't think that would have made much of a difference with the box office really at all, unfortunately.
Yeah. So pretty much there's a lot of missing elements from the game or from in the movie that they didn't utilize from the game at all.
Oh yeah. Because I mean, there were races and they were cool. But like I said, there was only two, and there's maybe one scene where he runs from a cop, but it's not a chase scene, if I'm remembering it right. I haven't seen it since last semester when we wrote the papers.
Yeah. So was the game much more, you think, appreciated than the actual? Obviously it was, but like, was it much more like the game was much more overappreciated than the actual movie itself? You think it's more-
Absolutely. The games were like, they made you feel like you were driving that speed, because that same year, or if not the year before the movie, there was a new game that came out. It was Need for Speed Rivals, which I still think is the best Need for Speed game. It is such a simple game. You either play as a racer and race, do hot pursuits, time trials, um, or you play as a cop and you chase all the racers. And you have like pursuit tech, so you can like shoot an EMP at a cop or a racer. And it is so awesome. And it really lives up to the name Need for Speed. Like, it fulfills that need. And I still play it, even though it's like an 8-year-old game. I love that game. And it is just such a fast paced game because it's only about racing,
Yeah.
and the movie just completely failed to capture that fast pace, high octane feel and I titled my paper "The Need Not Fulfilled," and I think that sums it up pretty correctly when it comes to the movie.
Yeah. So when it comes like I know like we talked about like TV shows going in, like adapting into a movie and stuff like that. It's kind of different process. But like for video games turning into a movie, do you think it's a whole different process? Like there's some elements that they just so hard to choose from because it's a video game in itself going into a movie. Do you think it's a
Yeah,
different process?
because like what makes a game have its appeal is that you're controlling it. It's all up to the person. And with a movie, you're not going in to do what you want to do. You're going in to watch someone else's vision and someone else's story, which I mean, there's beauty in both of them. But when adapting a game, it is a little difficult because it's almost like a book where you're reading the book, you're imagining everything that's happening in your head, and kind of automatically what you imagined is going to be better than what someone else imagined and put to screen. And with a game, you might, like, we'll stick with Need for Speed, for example. You might customize your car in a different way. You might have a bias over a Corvette Stingray than a Ford Mustang.
Mhm.
And you might have made it a certain color, you might enjoy it a different way, or you might like playing as the cops. With a movie, there's not a story to draw from, there's not a story really to tell, and with a game that is almost fully set on whatever the player wants, it's going to be hard to satisfy them because, the Ford Mustang in the movie is like silver and blue. It is a beautiful car.
Yeah.
Um, but in the game, I like playing Stingray, and I typically make it black or dark green, and it might just fail to connect with me that way. But that's just an example. That's not one of my issues with Need for Speed as a whole.
Mhm.
But for audiences who are fans of the game, it might be. And another thing with it is that the game completely captures that feeling of driving fast, and the movie just didn't. And so that's another thing it failed. But when it comes to video games, I think, why don't they just adapt ones with a story?
Yeah.
The job is almost done for you at that point. Like the Assassin's Creed movie, which I've only seen once, it was in theaters, and I never want to see it again ever in my life. That movie was torture. It was awful. Um, but when I saw it, I was like, why didn't they just adapt one of the games that already exists? Because they made their own story. And that movie has a ton of other issues. But the biggest one was that the story wasn't a pre-existing game, and they made it complicated for themselves. Like, why not just take one that already has a story and just do that? I know it's probably easier said than done, but like,
Yeah,
I think a game like Grand Theft Auto would make a way better movie
for sure.
than something like Need for Speed, which doesn't have a story or characters for the most part. But like Grand Theft Auto, you can see that it is heavily influenced by different movies, especially like Goodfellas or I think Menace to Society is one of them. That is like, I'm talking about the fifth one more specifically,
Yeah.
because like with Michael's story, that is so clearly based off of or influenced by something like Goodfellas. And so adapting that into a movie, you already have movie inspirations to draw from. And so there, I think studios have just, for some reason, made the job much more difficult for them. Because even with Sonic, although I do enjoy it, why didn't they just adapt one of the games directly that has like a story to it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, like even forget like you brought up Grand Theft Auto, drawing inspirations from that. There's so many things I think you can utilize as far as storytelling. Like you can play draw from. You said like I remember playing Grand Theft Auto 5, and I'm like, man, there's so many different like aspects you can probably even playing the game itself, like the story like mode of it. I'm like, there's so many different aspects you can bring if they were to turn into a movie. But
Oh yeah,
there's like
that would work so well as like a big epic action crime drama, and it would probably be one of the best video game movies. No, it would probably be the best video game movie ever because I'm again thinking of all the ones that have come out. They're mostly terrible.
yeah.
I did not like that new Mortal Kombat. I thought that was a train wreck.
Oh, really? What do you like? What about it makes it a train wreck? In your
The
opinion?
effects are horrendous. Like this is Warner Brothers. They just released the Suicide Squad. It's that same studio. They released Blade Runner, and that is like one of the most beautiful looking movies probably ever made. I mean, Roger Deakins, Denis Villeneuve, amazing movie. And then they turn around and release a movie that looks just as much like that Mortal Kombat Legacy web series made by fans. And my biggest gripe with it though is they had the audacity to make the poster Sub-Zero and Scorpion and have whopping two fights between the two of them in like a 2 hour movie or maybe even less than 2 hours, and there's two fights between them. And I'm just thinking, like in the 90s one, not having Sub-Zero and Scorpion as the main characters, that's okay because they weren't the most iconic characters in the 90s, not yet. But in 2021, even even like the most bare minimum amount of information someone can think of when they think of Mortal Kombat, even if they've never played a game ever, they know Scorpion and Sub-Zero. At this point, their rivalry is that game. And the choice of actors that played them, that great choices. They're both great actors. And they could have just made it about their rivalry, and it would have been an arguably pretty compelling movie with some amazing action. But instead, there's two fight scenes with them, which were easily the best scenes in the whole movie. And in between the two fights, much like Need for Speed, was just boring.
Yeah.
There wasn't even the tournament. They talk about the tournament the whole movie. They never even do it.
Yeah, for sure. I remember watching the original Mortal Kombat in Dean's class. I remember like it was based around like the tournament. It feels like they kind of how they first part of it's kind of like how they got to the tournament, and the rest of it's like the tournament itself. You know?
Yeah, like the point of the 90s one was the tournament. Like we actually saw them participating in it. And I don't like that one much either, but it's better than the new one because they knew really what the story at least should have been.
For sure. I remember like it was kind of based around like Johnny Cage and all those guys and everything like that. And you got their appearances from Sub-Zero and Scorpio and everything like that. So it feels like you kind of got a little bit of everything, even though those Scorpio and all those guys Sub-Zero weren't the most popular and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
They
remember they
still
saw,
gave them to you.
yeah, they remember they saw everything in post-production for Scorpio and everything like that. Cause I believe, or either one, I can't remember. Cause one of them just wasn't the biggest one, you know, it felt like at that time. It feels like you brought up a good point in the sense of like, with the newer one, I still haven't seen the new one yet. I don't know if I want to or not, but, I've been waiting. I'm like, I don't know if I want to or not, but it feels like, um, I saw the poster for the one that's came out, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
that's pretty cool. They have the two characters in it, and I'm like,
It's a cool poster, but it is wildly misleading.
yeah, I didn't even know that. I didn't mean, of course, I haven't seen the movie yet, but you would think from what I got from the poster itself, it feels like you would have thought those two would have been the lead of the movie or something like that,
Absolutely. And
or
it
not
would
the
have
lead,
been, I think that would have been awesome.
for sure. Not even lead of the movie. It feels like even like good secondary characters in the movie or something, It feels like they could have brought something more to the table to the storyline, but I don't know. I still haven't seen the movie yet, so I don't know. I'll debate it a little bit more if I want to watch it or not.
I don't even know if they've put it back on HBO Max because obviously it was on during its theatrical run, but I don't think they've put it on yet, and it's been a couple months since it came out.
For sure. There's some movies that, I still haven't even seen, I want to watch Mortal Kombat. It feels like I may end up watching it just because I want, like, just to watch it. I don't know. Make my own opinion about it. But there's another movie that comes to mind. I didn't even, or that came out around the same time as that one. And that was, the Kong versus Godzilla movie. That's kind of a bit of a remake from back in the day.
Oh
That,
yeah.
so that
Oh, that
was,
movie knew exactly what it needed to be.
for sure. I remember, I don't know, ever since I was a little kid, I was a big King Kong fan. And
Oh
cause
yeah, same. I saw the Peter Jackson one in theaters.
me too, I was a big fan of that one. Like even though it was like a 7 hour long movie, it
Oh
felt
yeah.
like it went on forever in a day, it feels like, but I don't know. It's just one of those movies I think that like, man, I love the Peter Jackson one. And then when they came out with a new version of it, the newer one, like, was it
Oh,
called
Skull Island.
Skull Island? Yeah. And I was like, man, this King Kong looks a lot more like intimidating in a way. It feels like this one is more
Yeah,
like,
he's more standy uppy.
for sure. It's more like he's taller, he's bigger. I remember one scene he legit like fights like, was it an octopus or something like that and tears it off, whatever.
Yeah, it was something. It was like a squid or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. I'm like, man, there's some remix coming out that I'm really like, I can get really into.
Yeah, when it comes to like full-fledged remakes where it's a movie that, existed a long time ago and then they decided to sort of reinterpret it, there's mostly bad, but there are some good ones out there. I recently watched Suspiria, the 2018 remake. I haven't seen the 70s one, but the 2018 remake was fantastic. It was such an unnerving movie. It's about this American ballet student who's like enrolling in this ballet academy in, I think, Germany, somewhere in Europe. But the whole academy is a front for a witch coven, and it is genuinely off-putting and scary. And the acting was amazing because it had the remake had Dakota Johnson, Tilda Swinton, and Tilda Swinton. She's one of the best actresses probably working today. Period. She plays two different characters, and there's like this therapist character who's an old man, and you see it and you think this man looks so weird, but it's just an old man. But no, that was Tilda Swinton playing an old man convincingly. Like, she just disappeared in that character so well.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so many, like the dance sequences, those within themselves sort of tell a story. And the horror to the dance sequences, I mean, it's really off-putting because like there's a scene or there's two scenes where um these characters are, performing this dance, and they're almost controlling another character in a different room, and they're becoming all like disfigured and like broken, and it was like watching a car crash. Like you want to look away because what you're seeing is truly devastating,
Yeah.
but you don't wanna. It felt like that. It was a good movie. I think it's directed by Luca Guadagnino. I probably completely butchered that name. He's an Italian director, and he's actually kind of like an expert in remakes because he also directed A Bigger Splash, which was a remake of the swimming pools with Ray Fiennes and other actors too. I haven't seen A Bigger Splash though. I just know about it, and he's going to direct another Scarface remake, which is crazy because the Al Pacino one is a remake itself, and that movie is so iconic that I think people, myself included, often forget that that is a remake.
I always forget about that because I remember I watched the Al Pacino one from time to time, and I remember like, man, this is just a great movie. When I first watched it, I didn't even know it was a remake. I was like, man, this is a good.
I didn't either when I first saw it. You
Yeah, and I
wouldn't
was like,
think it is.
you would have thought too. Like, there's so many great like s- good like scenes, like acting wise. It feels like that's a really good movie. Al Pacino
Al
killed it.
Pacino, that dude is an expert actor, and that along with stuff like The Godfather and Heat and Insomnia and just a lot of others, it's just like it's almost like he takes on these movies just to show off how amazing of an actor he is, and it's like, yeah, all right, Al Pacino, we get it, you can act,
I know he's
but like if he wants to keep showing off, good for him because he's still good at it. The Irishman, I thought was fantastic.
for sure. Those are some of those movies are like one of those movies that's stand the test of time. I think it feels like Al Pacino is one of those people who understands the project. He's one of those people that goes all in. He understands what he needs to do when he needs to
Oh
do
yeah,
it.
he like does what every actor needs to do. He puts himself and he immerses himself in that character, and Al Pacino, the man, just disappears and he becomes, whoever it is he's playing, whether it's uh Michael Corleone. I haven't seen The Godfathers. I need to.
Yeah.
And I think he plays Michael Corleone. My dad's a big true crime fan, and yeah,
Oh,
his favorite movies are Godfather, Scarface, Goodfellas, and he's almost finished with The Sopranos on HBO.
yeah.
And yeah, speaking of TV show adaptations earlier, Many Saints and Newark's coming out. That's a Sopranos prequel, and it looks really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So,
Anyways, way off topic there.
it's okay. I don't care. Maybe you can go anywhere you want to take this, but, so what are your, like, I just want to know, like, what are your, like, overall, what are your honest, I guess, thoughts on remix? Should they happen more often or just more frequently to make it that element of element more better, or what are your thoughts on it?
So when it comes to remakes, I do think the idea isn't that bad on the completely on the surface of a remake where you just take something that exists and add your own interpretation to it. I think that's fine, but it's when they take already very well renowned movies and that aren't even that old and kind of make them worse and not reinterpret it because a good example of a bad remake would be Spike Lee's Old Boy remake.
Oh yeah.
The original one from 2003, I believe it's a Korean movie, South Korean. It is one of the most, like, it is one of the finest movies ever made. It is such a good revenge story. The action is arguably kind of groundbreaking. I mean, if it wasn't for that hallway sequence, I don't think we would have sequences that we saw in like Daredevil or The Raid.
Oh yeah.
And like the main actor who was in Old Boy, the 2003 one, he like really, I mean, talking about Al Pacino and other actors, he completely disappears and throws himself into this character, and the character himself has this almost like not even 180, but like 360 transformation, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Where like in the beginning he's like a fat drunk, and towards the second act he's like a buff martial arts dude, and he's hell bent on revenge. And the ending completely pulls the rug out from under you and is so effective and is kind of messed up. And the Spike Lee remake, it came out like only 10 years later for some reason, not even that old of a movie. And Josh Brolin was in it, and Josh Brolin's a great actor, no
Yeah.
doubt in there. And Spike Lee is a good director. I don't know what happened with Old Boy, but movies like Do the Right Thing, those are like so influential and so important, like even still today. And that's like a 30-year-old movie. But with Old Boy, it seemed like he did not want to direct it, because if you look at interviews, he seems so bored while talking about it. And clearly it was a movie that the studio, whichever studio it was, just had him do it. And I guess he did it for a paycheck. I don't know. And it just seemed like no one was really just putting their all into it. Josh Brolin, you can tell he tried. Elizabeth Olsen was in it. You can tell she tried. But when you compare their performances in Old Boy to their good stuff, it's just so clear that the direction was not there. And when you look at Spike Lee's enthusiasm talking about something like Black Klansman recently, he has so much passion talking about stories that he genuinely wants to tell. And
Yeah.
Old Boy was just not one that he seemed to want to tell. And every change they made was not for the better. It was easily for the worse, because it lacked that emotional pull that the original had. And a lot of the scenes that they sort of like changed up are unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah.
Like there's a torture scene in the first one where the main character is pulling a guy's teeth out. It is brutal and it's hard to watch. But you know, it's a torture scene, it's supposed to be, and it's making you cringe, and yeah, it's very effective. But the one in the 2013 Spike Lee version, he's like cutting little pieces of his neck, which does look painful, but who can say they've actually felt the pain of that normally? Because everyone has felt the pain of, you know, pulling a tooth. It's something everyone goes through.
Yeah.
And to like stop him from talking, he just gets like a ball of yarn and just sits it in his mouth. And it looks hilarious. It's clear that Sam Jackson's character, that's the one that's being tortured, is just biting down on it. It was so bad. And the action was 1,000 times worse. It was
Yeah.
so bad. And I guess that's because maybe Spike Lee's not really an action movie director. His movies are mostly dramas. And here he is directing a revenge action thriller, and it just didn't work. And it was clear that, or it seemed clear that the studio wanted to remake Old Boy to appeal to an American audience when the original easily could. It's just subtitles. Just read the subtitles.
For sure. There's a lot of, I guess, aspects that go in that I guess they just didn't capitalize on when they said of, as far as like cinematography wise, the aspect of it. Like, I don't know. There's so many things that, just by hearing it, I've never seen the movies, but just by hearing it, it sounds like they've totally dropped the ball in different aspects in the remake.
Absolutely. There's not one aspect in the remake that I could say is even slightly better than the original. Because yeah, you want to talk about cinematography. The shots in Old Boy, I mean, the lighting and like the movement of the camera, it seems so meticulously planned. And, like the hallway shot, it is just the camera sweeping the hallway, and it's the character just going through a bunch of bad guys. And, it has like such a unique and specific look to it, where the original, or not the original, the remake has such bland shot composition. For
Mhm.
some reason, the lighting is so bright and it looks like a TV show almost. And their version of that hallway fight wasn't nearly as stylistic. And the sound design in that fight too, I don't know what was up with it, but it was just all off.
Yeah, so sounds crazy, but like I guess what element or elements of cinematography draw you into a movie? Like, is there anything that sticks out to you like when you're watching the movie? Like, oh, that's a really cool aspect, or is there anything that like ultimately like draws you in that makes you keep watching the movie?
Um, Nowadays it is like way more popular than it ever has been. But one thing I love, just love, is when the cinematographer and the director for that matter decide not to cut away from whatever's happening, but just to keep the take rolling and just it gives the movie this feeling of like unpredictability. But like, something like 1917, you can see where the cuts were, and it worked for the most part, but it just kind of felt like a gimmick with 1917. But then you look at Birdman, as I mentioned earlier. That whole movie is kind of what popularized this single take thing in Hollywood. And it is about Michael Keaton plays like a washed up actor who is like trying to write a play and put it on Broadway. And he's only famous for playing this fictional superhero called Birdman
Mhm.
from like 30 years ago, kind of like Michael Keaton is today with Batman. And the whole movie is shot and edited to look like one single take. It's a pretty trippy movie at times, and it gives it this unpredictable feel as to like, oh, what's happening next? Why is the shot still lingering? Something's going to happen, and then something does happen. And it also allows for creative, transitions like techniques, because there's this one shot that shows the day passing to night. Like, how are you supposed to show that transition without a jump cut?
Oh
The
yeah.
lighting, like what they did with the lighting and the editing, it was like, oh, no wonder they would do that, because it would just simply show the sky going darker and then coming back up bright again. And it's like, oh, well, that's simple, but it looked really good. And it showed the passage of time so simply yet so perfectly. And when it comes to like how the character sees things in his head, it also that adds to the unpredictability of it. Like you don't know, is this actually happening, or is this only what the character is seeing? Like what is actually happening gives you more perspective. And yeah, with someone like Birdman, it works so well. But then in action movies, when the camera stays rolling and doesn't cut away from what's happening, it
Mhm.
just makes the action look smooth and honestly more tension filled and more entertaining. Cause like, the raid, or, well, yeah, the raid too, that has many shots that just keep going while the action's going. And it's like, oh my God, how further are they going to keep going? How much are they going to keep fighting? Also, the fact that the camera's moving like with the action, it just is so stylistic and is so entertaining. And so yeah, and it also, like I kept saying about Birdman, it kind of makes it more unpredictable.
Yeah.
Because
And
like
then
with the shot lingering, it's like, whoa, what's going to happen next? And for like a drama, you're constantly questioning where's this going to go, because the shot is still going. Why? And you find out why, and it is just kind of pulls the rug out from under you.
yeah, there's so many I think when done right, there's so many I think elements in a movie that can just so many even simple things too that can just make a big effect in a movie as far as cinematography goes too. It feels like you said lighting could be, transitioning from day to night and from night to day. It feels like there's so many things that could just crazy things that cool, creative, I guess sometimes simple ways that could just pull a, you know, movie viewer in, there's
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
many ways in, that's so creative and people just think outside the box all the time, so that's kind of what I look for. Just sometimes like, when I watch movies, I'm looking for that kind of stuff sometimes. I don't know why, not every time, but there's been times like, oh yeah, that lighting would have been cool that way, or that camera angle, or this piece of editing, this blah blah blah, XYZ. There's so many things that I'm like, I'm probably the worst. Honestly, probably the worst. Maybe sometimes to go watch the movie with sometimes because like that's what I look for. Like, how did this person do that? Like, what's the
Oh
purpose
yeah,
of this?
that's how I
So
am.
yeah, I guess just kind of by default. I guess I don't know why. I guess being a communications major, I don't know.
I mean,
So
that's why we're in the majors we're in, though.
for sure. I
'Cause
mean,
that's how
looking up.
we like see this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, just I guess something different. I don't know. I can't be a science major or math major to save my life. So.
Me neither.
Throw me in a math class and I'm totally lost, or science class or anything like that. I'm the wrong person to be talking that kind of stuff with.
I barely passed my math and science classes these past few semesters, just barely hanging on. I passed them though, but not by a long shot at all.
Yeah, I'm a complete stooge when it comes to like math or anything. I barely passed college algebra. Like I made like a 71 or 2 in the class. I barely passed the final with a 70. I'm a stooge. I don't know. I can't tell you what the quadratic formula is. I can tell you the name of it, but I can't tell you what it is or how to use it or apply it to anything in
I
life.
was good in algebra, but I can't remember the quadratic formula either.
Like
Hey,
even
that's why we're fine arts majors though.
for sure. So I guess to wrap things up a little bit, yeah, this is a question I kind of ask everybody at the end of every guest at the end. So, what 3 things are you kind of grateful for right now?
Oh, just in general?
Yeah, just in general, anything at all.
Grateful. I right now, cause like we kind of had a family emergency yesterday. Um, my my grandpa was sent to the ICU. He was airlifted from Hobbs, New Mexico to El Paso, and yeah, right now the biggest thing I'm thankful for is my parents right now. Like I cannot imagine what my mom is going through. It's her dad, and she's in El Paso right now at the hospital with him. And yeah, I just whenever she's back, I it's gonna be tough moving back to Canyon, even though it's an hour away, because I'm in Plainview. Because yeah, it's one of those moments where I realize I need to cherish these two people as much as I can, and not that I don't, but it's still just an eye-opening thing when something this big happens. And so yeah, we're hoping for like a speedy recovery. But yeah, the biggest thing I'm thankful for right now, not just my parents, but just my whole family right now.
Cool. I'm sorry to hear
Especially right now. Not that I'm not ever
that.
thankful for them. It's just in this moment, yeah, I'm like cherishing them.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I'll be sending some, prayers your way, man. Hopefully, speedy recovery and everything works out great, man.
Thank you.
For sure. So, thank you for coming on the cell, man. It really means a lot that you actually took the time out to, talk movies with me, talk adaptations, remakes, cinematography.
Yeah,
Means a lot,
thanks for
dude.
having me. I take any chance I get to talk about movies. I mean, I watch them daily, and I mean, I don't know if that makes me sound lazy because I don't do anything else. Well, that's not true. I watch them and I analyze them, and then I can make them in the future. That's what I'm hoping to do.
For sure.
So
So, are
turn
you,
that lazy task into something.
for sure, are you planning to, like, go into film or something? Is that something, a career path you're thinking of? Or, it sounds like you
Oh yeah,
seem
for
a
sure.
lot, you know a lot of, so that's
Yeah,
something,
that's what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to be a writer and not really a writer. I'm not the greatest writer when it comes to dialogue, especially, but a director, that's the top goal right there.
oh, cool, man. So that seems pretty interesting. So hopefully you can, teach Spike Lee a thing or two about remakes or something.
Oh, if I try and talk to Spike Lee like that, that's gonna be intimidating.
I don't know. Who knows? You may be bigger than him, or one day popularity wise, and just give him one of your classic rants that you gave in Dane's class or something. Like
Now
this is
that
an
I bet he would find entertaining.
for
But
sure.
first,
So
I gotta tell Christopher Nolan everything I figured out about Tenet. See if I'm correct.
yeah, Tenet was a crazy movie, crazy good movie, I guess. But yeah,
I love that movie.
yeah. So it was a really good movie. But I just want to say, thanks again for coming on, and
Thanks
thanks
for
to
having me.
everybody. Yeah, for sure. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, took the time out to tune in. Hopefully everybody has a great weekend, and hopefully no Friday the 13th feels come out of nowhere. So, thanks to everybody tuning in. So everybody has a great weekend. See everybody. Hey, did you like watching that last episode of What Really Happened? If so, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more content on this channel.